Okay, it is 4 o'clock. I will call the December 18th, 2023 Salina City Commission meeting to order. I would first look to staff for confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, may we have a roll call?
Mayor Hoppick,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Lankowitz, Commissioner Longbine,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here. Will those who are able please stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we have an award and proclamation.
Item 3.1, recognition of the retirement of Fire Inspector Jeff Daly. Mayor Hoppick will read the proclamation.
Okay, let's see if this microphone's working. Ms. Daly, I ask you to join me down here. I guess this is an exciting time for you. After almost 30 years of service, I'll read the proclamation to you on behalf of the City of Salina. This reads, an appreciation to Fire Inspector Jeffrey A. Daly for his employment with the City of Salina, Kansas from October 16, 1994 to January 2nd, 2024. Whereas during the period from October 16, 1994 to January 2nd, 2024, Jeffrey A. Daly served as a firefighter, EMT, a firefighter, paramedic, and a fire inspector for the fire department of the City of Salina, Kansas. And whereas Jeffrey A. Daly has demonstrated invaluable and dedicated service to the City of Salina, and whereas such service and dedication to his job and the interests of the City of Salina are worthy of public recognition. So now, therefore, I, the Mayor of the City of Salina, Kansas, hereby present this official expression of gratitude and appreciation to Jeffrey A. Daly. Congratulations. Now, some of his colleagues said this is dangerous, but I'm going to allow Mr. Daly to have a few words for him.
Oh, thank you. Got my fancy notes here on my. Firemen, we naturally shun the spotlight. We don't like recognition. We just like to do our job. And even though it may look, heroic or whatever to a lot of people, we just consider it doing our job. And so when anybody draws any attention to that, it really embarrasses us and makes us uncomfortable. And so since I'm up here being embarrassed and uncomfortable, I thought I'd shine the spotlight on kind of my two families. So my wife, Jody, and my father, Steve, and my fire department family. It's been 30 years, and that's like 210 years in fireman years. You don't get through 30 years without a good family, a good home family, and a good work family. And I wanted to read our mission statement because sometimes that gets lost in a lot of things. It's been a couple of years. It's been a little rough for the fire department. And so for everybody to remember, and for these guys to remember, I just wanted to remember what our guiding purpose is, our mission statement, and that is that we respond quickly. Don't worry, this is the safe challenge point, by the way. So we want to respond quickly. We want to perform professionally. We want to save lives and property. We want to be caring and compassionate to all, and we want everyone to go home. And that's the underlying message of our job. That oftentimes has and will cause casualties within our fire department, not only actual casualties, but individuals that, because of the nature of our work, leave us. And so I just wanted to let you guys know, in the city of Salina, how very, very proud I have been to serve for 30 years. It's been an adventure. I will not do anything else in my life that has meant as much to me and meet co-workers and people that I've worked with that will mean as much to me. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate all of your support and laughing at my bad jokes and whatever else. So thank you very much to Salina, and thank you very much to the Salina Fire Department, Chief. Appreciate it. Yep. Thank you so much.
On behalf of the City of Salina, again, we thank you, and you're just an example of the exceptional fire department we have here in Salina, and sometimes you guys do such a good job, I think we take for granted what we have. But again,
That's the best way to do it.
yeah, so thank you guys very much, not only yourself, but the entire fire department.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
luck to you on your retirement.
Yeah,
sir.
appreciate it. Bye.
Those are always bittersweet. It's always good to see someone that's reached retirement, but it's always sad to see a good person leave a department. So, but I'm sure he's left it better than he found it, so we appreciate that. So that will lead us to public hearings and items for a certain time.
Item 4.1, public hearing for the 2023 amended budget.
Okay, I will call the public hearing to order. Ms. Pack.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Debbie Pack, Director of Finance and Administration. Statute does require anytime we adopt a budget or amend a budget to hold a public hearing to hear the comments from the public. It's also required that we put a notice of that hearing in the paper 10 days prior to the hearing. Our notice was published in the Salina Journal on December 8th, and we'll hold our public hearing today. For 2023, we have 6 city funds that are going to require amendments. Those are the General Fund, the Arts and Humanities Fund, the Tourism Fund, the Special Alcohol Fund, Solid Waste Fund, and the Golf Course Fund. I'm not going to go through individually because we did that just a couple weeks ago, but I would stand for any questions, and the 2 action items are to conduct the public hearing and for you to consider approval of the amended budget.
Okay, are there any questions or comments for Ms. Pack? Is there any comments or questions from the public? Okay, if not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move approval of the amended budget for 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the amended budget for 2023. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 4-0. Thank you. That will bring us to the consent agenda.
Item 5.1 is to approve the minutes of the meeting of December 11th, 2023. Item 5.2 is award the bid for project number 23006, the 2023 Broadway medians, to Smoky Hill LLC of Salina in the amount of $358,509.25 with a 5% construction contingency for a total project authorization not to exceed $376,434.71, and authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Smoky Hill LLC upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the bid documents. Item 5.3, authorize the city manager to execute an agreement for the purchase of 6 wastewater pumps from Environmental and Process Systems, Inc. of Lenexa, Kansas. Item 5.4, award the bid for project number 23036, Salina Downtown Water Treatment Chlorination Facility roof replacement to Meridian Roofing Solutions in the amount of $102,180 with a 10% construction contingency for a total project authorization not to exceed $112,398, and authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Meridian Roofing Solutions upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the bid documents. Item 5.5, award the bid for project number 21030, project number 1 water main replacement to Smoky Hill LLC in the amount of $1,996,886 with a 5% construction contingency for a total project authorization not to exceed $2,096,730, and authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Smoky Hill LLC upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the bid documents. And item 5.6, which has a typo, approve resolution number 23-8179, amending resolution number 18-7559 to extend the 2018 to 2023 Neighborhood Revitalization Plan Tax Rebate Program until January 22nd, and that should say 2024.
Okay, thank you very much. Based on an email we received late last night, I will be pulling item 5.2 off the consent agenda. Are there any other items?
I just have one quick question on 5.4. Almost not worthy pulling it off, but
You want to just
Don't.
ask it without pulling it off?
yeah, if that would,
Is Martha, I think that's your item.
yeah. The answer may be in here, but most of our contingencies are 5%, and I noticed this one was 10. Is that just because of you expect to find some unknowns when you pull the roof off?
I do expect to find
Okay.
some unknowns based on the condition of the roof. Once we pull it off, there may be something we didn't see that needs to be done, so.
That's what I thought. That was it. Thank you.
And I would add it's a relatively small project cost, so 10% just allows some additional flexibility.
Here,
there.
Mr. Tasker.
Some extra buffer.
I got a quick question on 5.5.
Okay, I didn't bring that one with me, so you'll test my memory. Go for it.
Will the residents who are going to be getting their water lines replaced be notified at some point?
As quick as you give the official word tonight, I will be emailing them. I've been emailing 3rd Street and letting them know
Very
what's
good.
going on. Bel Air said everything was fine over the summer, so I don't know, I'm almost afraid to go over there and tell them we're gonna replace their line, but I'll contact them and let
Okay,
them know.
thank you.
Those have been areas of concern.
Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion to approve the,
Mayor, I would move we approve consent agenda items 5.1, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6 as presented.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 5.1, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That item passes 4-0. That will lead us back to item 5.2, and I'll look to Mr. Scragg. Mike and I have had some conversations this morning, and
Sure.
we can explain why we pulled that.
So a citizen raised a question about the plans themselves and the location of median specifically as part of this project on Broadway south of South Street. And it appeared that the plan showed it extending further than it currently exists in the field, and asked whether that was the case. That it was a correct interpretation of the plans, but that was not necessarily the project intent. So at your seats, you should have a revised set of plans that shows a shortened Broadway median section, and it reflects the field conditions, and as a net result of that, does not extend past the driveway entrance there on the south of that aerial photo. I will turn it over to Dan Stack to speak to that more specifically, as well as we talked this morning about just reviewing all the plans and all the field conditions, making sure that there weren't any other clarifications that we needed to make.
Mr. Stack?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Yeah, that was a oversight, and yeah, got through quite a few of us to, the intent was to shorten them or keep them the same. So that seemed pretty cut and dried, but for some reason, the aerial mapping, just for some reason, our technician just got it further than was supposed to happen, and you can clearly see it on the side, and those people are watching us out there, so I'm impressed that they're able to find it buried in this blue sheet on the commission agenda, but they would have, I feel like we would have caught it eventually, we hope, but either way, it's fixed now on these plans, and we will not make that one any longer than it currently is. The rest of them we've checked, definitely south of State, we're shortening that one quite a bit to help the convenience store there around, the Quick Star convenience store. North of South Street, we're shortening that some as well to help with the west side of Broadway. So it's that one we have measured, and we're shortening that a little bit. And then, of course, the one south of South Street, it said 246 feet, it's supposed to be 190. So that is the new measurement, that's what it'll be. And then the Crawford, north and south Crawfords are basically replacing like for like. That's a busy
The graphic
intersection.
we have at our desk here is correct.
That's correct.
Do we
That's-
have that to put up on the screen there?
Probably not. No, we did not put,
Maybe not.
sorry, we do not.
And I do have a copy of that, and I promised the citizen that I would email that to them, so
Okay.
I will be emailing that to them to.
Great. Do you
So-
need that PDF or that one right there?
I think this will work. If
That'll
not,
work?
I'll
Okay.
let you know tomorrow.
Okay, yeah,
anyway,
let us know,
so.
no problem.
And we can add the revised plan document to the packet that'll be ultimately posted online.
Okay, we'll do that.
Yeah, I think the Broadway, removing the medians is one of the most beneficial things we've done in quite a while, it seemed like, to that area, and that individual was concerned that it was going to block off entry to their business.
Right.
And I assured him this morning that that was not our
Not the
intention.
intent. Thank you.
And so
Yes.
I said, well, we'll get with staff and get you an answer today. So
Yeah,
I
I
do
apologize.
appreciate everybody getting right on that also, so.
It's a good-
Apologize for the
good
error.
catch.
Yes, very good catch. Apologize for the error. Sorry for the pain.
And I thank that citizen for reaching out to us the way they did, so that's.
Scary
We
few
appreciate
moments
it.
for that citizen. They did not want that to happen, and I totally understand. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commission on this?
I have some questions on south of Crawford. I guess my pet peeve is the weeds and vegetation that grows
Yeah.
between Crawford and 9th Street. Has there been any ideas to address that?
Well, the goal is to
I
do
think we
another meeting.
decided to leave the medians, correct?
Yeah, well, which ones are you talking about from Crawford to Republic? Because we're dealing with the one south of Crawford here to the edge of Sunset Plaza, so kind of that big cheese pizza that are, we're
And then
gonna
it goes
fix
on-
that one.
It goes on south.
And further south, those are massive, ugly medians, definitely south of Sunset Plaza there to Republic. That one's in the next phase, so we'll get that one fixed hopefully next year.
Okay.
Yeah, now that we feel like we have a plan, you know, with bricks and medians are fairly pricey, but the stamped concrete thing really came back pretty good for us, so we're hoping to, you know, get that bid next year as
I think
well.
we had
just
a
to keep on going.
study session on that and gave you some direction on that, correct? On those between,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was
We've
thinking.
broken it into phases. Just to be clear, when Dan says next year, I think
24.
this section will be 24.
Yeah,
within
this
that
will get
section.
built in 24 as well. We're late in 23, but this was the 23 median project. The 24 median project, we feel like now that we kind of have a plan, we can get out earlier than November of next year. So our hope is maybe get that out a little earlier and get that one working as well.
I drove through there and looked at it, and I tried to observe. We contracted to have existing pavers re-stained.
Yes.
Did that
did.
all get accomplished?
Yes, it did.
It was hard to tell driving.
Yeah, it's interesting if you are, you have to get out and walk on them to a certain, I mean, we kind of, all of us did that. And it was interesting too, because now you don't know the difference, but when you actually saw them doing the work, you could see the old pavers and the new pavers, and they showed it to us, and we all went out there and like, wow, it really does, you really can see it. So hopefully, if you actually went out there and took a walk, you'd say, okay, it looks better than before. But if you can't see it, then it's a good, you know, luckily it didn't cost us a lot of money, but maybe it's not as beneficial as we thought. We felt like, but when you look at them side by side, old and new, it did make a difference.
So it was a good move, in your
Hopefully.
opinion. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from the public on this item? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, move approval of consent agenda item 5.2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item 5.2 and award the bid for project number 23006 Broadway medians to Smoky Hill LLC in the amount of $358,509.25 with a 5% construction contingency. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. And again, thank you for staff for getting on that right away this morning. That will lead us to administration.
Item 6.1, approve ordinance number 23-11190 on second reading, amending the zoning ordinance to add group daycare homes providing care for no more than 12 children in an unoccupied dwelling to the list of conditional uses allowed in the RS, R, R1, R2, R2.5, R3, and MH-S zoning districts.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11190 was passed on first reading on December 11th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission on that?
Just want, if we were to simplify this, someone could buy the vacant house next door, not live in it, have a daycare center during the day. Prior to that, routine notice would be sent out by the planning commission for neighbors to voice comments.
Yes, I think that's an accurate description. It would be subject to a conditional use permit
Conditional, right,
process,
right.
which would be the notice that you're describing, and it would be subject to numeric limits on the number of children that could be cared for, but what your description is accurate.
Okay, questions or comments from the public? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-11190 on second reading.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11190 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Lankowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 6.2.
Item 6.2, approve ordinance number 23-11188 on second reading, amending Chapter 2 of the Salina Code pertaining to administration by amending and repealing Article 12, Public Improvement Procedures.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11188 was passed on first reading on December 11th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
No.
Questions or comments from the public on this? If not, I will bring it back to the commission for
Mayor, I
action.
move we approve ordinance number 23-11188 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11188 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Lankowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will bring us to item 6.3.
Item 6.3 deals with the Salina Community Theater Association expansion, and it's two parts. 6.3A is to authorize the mayor to execute a special warranty deed with covenants regarding conveyance of real estate associated with the Salina Community Theater Association for the purpose of expansion of the theater facility into Founders Park. And item 6.3B is to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment and complete restatement of the community theater maintenance and operating agreement with the Salina Community Theater Association.
Okay. Mr. Wood.
Mayor and Commissioners, Jacob Wood, Deputy City Manager. As you guys are aware, Salina Community Theater has approached the city about the possibility of expanding their facility into Founders Park. In order to do that, we have to follow a process outlined in KSA 12-1301, which allows for a protest petition. On November 6th, the City Commission authorized the city staff to prepare and publish this notice in the city paper. The protest period elapsed on December 15th without any protest petition, so at this point we have fulfilled all of the requirements of the notice. So if the commission desires, we can go ahead and move through the process of transferring the property to Theatre Salina. As part of this discussion, we did meet with Theatre Salina staff. City staff recommended that we update our maintenance and operations agreement. There was some lengthy discussions with Theatre Salina. I won't go through all of the provisions that we came back with, but both entities agreed to what we thought was the best operations and maintenance agreement moving forward. And basically what it does is it caps the city's liability at a similar level to where we're at today. So the options today are to authorize the mayor to execute special warranty deed with covenants. I will say there's a kind of a lengthy motion there, and the reason it's that way is so that we can, there's order of operations here. We want to approve the warranty deed and then approve the agreement, and then we'll have them all signed kind of at the same time and move forward that way. So your options are to authorize that deed, and if you want to move forward with the special warranty deed, then we would ask that you authorize the city manager to execute the amendment and complete restatement of the agreement. Theatre Salina has representation here. Michael Spicer's in the audience and some board members as well. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to stand for questions on this end.
Yeah, I'll look to my left. Any questions for staff or for the community theater on this item?
I have none.
Nope.
Okay, any comments or questions from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring this back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move that the Salina City Commission authorize the mayor to execute a special warranty deed with covenants regarding conveyance of real estate associated with Salina Community Theater Association for the purpose of expansion of the theater facility into Founders Park for delivery to the Salina Community Theater Association by the city manager following and conditional upon approval and execution of an amendment and complete restatement of the community theater maintenance and operating agreement by the authorized signatories for the city and the SCTA.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, authorizing the mayor to execute a special warranty deed with covenants regarding conveyance of real estate associated with the Salina Community Theater for the purpose of expansion of the theater facility into Founders Park for delivery to the SCTA by the city manager following and conditional upon approval and execution of an amendment and complete restatement of the community theater maintenance and operating agreement by the authorized signatories for the city of Salina and the SCTA. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item A passes 5-0. Do I have action on item B?
Mayor, I move that the city commission authorize the city manager to execute an agreement and complete restatement of the community theater maintenance and operating agreement with the Salina Community Theater Organization.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment and complete restatement of the community theater maintenance and operating agreement with the Salina Community Theater Association. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. And we look forward to seeing the new addition and the expansion of the theater. So thank you very much for your vision and good luck. That will lead us to item 6.4.
Really quickly, though, on that last item, the documents are there in your folder for signatures. If you would like to sign them and pass them down to me for attestation, we can get them notarized.
Okay.
But in the meantime, item 6.4 is to approve resolution number 23-8180, designating the official city newspaper for the City of Salina to be the City of Salina, Kansas website, and designating an alternative newspaper for those notices not required to be in the official city newspaper.
Okay, Mr. Hennessy.
Sean Hennessy, Assistant City Manager. Commissioners, what you have before you today is a resolution that designates the City of Salina website to be the official city newspaper. A little bit of history. If you'll remember, back in August, the City Commission approved a charter which essentially a charter ordinance which allows the city to charter out. And what that means is, under the Kansas statutes currently, there has to be a designation of an official city newspaper, and there is certain criteria that have to be met in order to be an official city newspaper. However, those statutes are not uniform, and therefore the city had the option of adopting a charter ordinance. That charter ordinance was adopted. Therefore, right now, the city, because the 60-day protest period has expired, the city has the option of designating its website to be the official city newspaper. This is, and it's important to note, this is only for notices that are required in the state statute to be in the official city newspaper. The state statutes, unfortunately, are not uniform in the notices required. Sometimes they require notices to be in a newspaper of general circulation, and sometimes it just says you have to provide notice with no other additional information. What this resolution today, because the charter ordinance has been adopted and the protest period has expired, it allows the city commission to designate the city website to be the official city newspaper, and additionally to designate where they would like those non-official city newspaper notices to be published. A little bit more of additional information, really essentially the two options for the newspaper selection are the Salina Journal, which is currently the official city newspaper, and or Salina 311. Both have a roughly, I was able to get updated subscription numbers, or actually the city clerk was, so thank you for getting that. Currently, there's 3,190 paid subscriptions for Salina 311 and 23,378 subscriptions. Those are just, if you go online and subscribe to it, doesn't require a fee. The Salina Journal has 3,900 paid Sunday subscriptions. That was as of August 1st. I haven't gotten those updated numbers, but I don't assume that they're significantly different. There is a significant cost difference. Both newspapers charge by the column inch. The Salina Journal charges $14.38. Again, that was as of August 1st. Salina 311 charges $6 by the inch, and that was the same price it was in August as it is today. I will point out that had some discussions with the county. The county has designated Salina 311 for their notices. It went into effect earlier this summer. They had a few minor glitches. It was a significant change. Overall, they are very happy with the change. It has resulted in the townships saving a significant amount on their notice requirements, and they are happy with the selection so far and the roughly 6 months that they've been operating to publish their notices in Salina 311. So the options before you are to adopt the resolution designating the city website. This would make the city website the location for the official city newspaper and for those notifications that are required there, and additionally to designate where those other notices would be published. Alternatively, you could decline to adopt a new resolution, and in such case, the Salina Journal would continue to be the official city newspaper, or you could amend the resolution as you see fit. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions you may have about this.
Okay, I'll start to my left. On the first page of the blue sheet, in listing the requirements to be an official city newspaper, which may be moot considering action we're probably going to take, it states that the newspaper must be published in the county. Are both or either of those our current newspapers actually does published equate to printed, or?
Yeah,
I'm assuming it meant the printing press or the copying, whatever produces the paper is located in the.
Yes, although it's important to note that those are the requirements to be the official city newspaper, and those requirements no longer apply due to the fact that the city has chartered out of that statutory section. Gotcha. However, they do meet those requirements if you were to so designate the either of them as the official city newspaper.
All right, and those requirements wouldn't apply to the other notices would just have to be in a newspaper of general circulation?
Yes, the state statutes are unfortunately not entirely consistent, so there is other requirements that notices have to be newspapers of general circulation. They, however, do not have this criteria laid out, and that also means that you don't have the option of chartering out from them because they treat things uniformly. The reason why you have the chartering out option is because it does not treat the cities uniformly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ryan?
Any questions? Can you give those price quotes on the per inch line?
Sure.
Again?
It's, I do want to caveat by saying this, that it depends also if you do classifieds and other things, but by the column inch, the prices are $14.38 for the Salina Journal. That was as of August 1st. The city clerk attempted to verify that's still the cost, but we haven't heard back today. We did verify that the cost, as it was on August 1st, is still $6 per column inch for Salina 311. So it's less than half of the price per column inch.
And publishing in 311 would go in the paper as well as their website.
Yes, the intention is to, if it's submitted to the website, you will publish it. If something has to be, if something is a notice that is required to be in the official city newspaper, it has to be published on the website. You can, however, publish additional notices on the city website to make sure that it's spread as far as possible. And that is the intention, is to certainly publish as much notices and make them as easily available as possible. But it is not a requirement for those other notices.
So just to clarify, in the interest of cost savings, if it's required to be published in the official city newspaper, that would be published on the website. If it's required to be published in either one of those other two categories, newspaper of general circulation or just generally published, we would pay to publish that in a print media of your choosing and of your designation in the resolution, and then we would also continue to put it on our website. But I don't know that I see us going ahead and publishing things that could be, where the requirement can be satisfied just by the city's website, or we wouldn't have needed to take all the action that we took to get to this point today in terms of chartering out of that requirement.
Some of these other items, I guess I'm thinking of like, we put advertisements for help wanted. And so that would be something that would go to the designated paper in circulation.
Yeah, that would be more of a discretionary decision, whether it's that or a press release for landfill policies, whatever the case may be, with one exception. I think we may have some language in our personnel manual currently that dictates publication of those positions. We've been having some conversation about how effective that is and whether we want to continue to make that a practice or whether we want to be more selective in that approach.
Well, just so the other commissioners know, I've experimented and played with this, and I have an account set up at the city, and I am getting emails when there is a publication posted on the website, and so that's all working, and so I'm in favor of going this direction. And the cost savings with and keeping our money local with 311.
Question about Salina 311, they have, if you go online and look, it has member and it has public. Would these fall under member, that you'd have to have a subscription to view these notices, or would it show up under the public?
It's my understanding that the notices would still be available in the public. You do get, with the subscription, some of the news articles are restricted, but the notices would still be available.
To everyone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize if I'm telling you something you already know, but the resolution that's before you has a blank in it for the selection of the Salina Journal or Salina 311. So that's an amendment that you'll need to make as part of your action.
Well, I guess it's time to weigh in with my opinion about the the newspaper. I mean, I agree with making the official city newspaper the city's website, but when it comes to the choice of the two, I prefer the traditional paper. The Salina Journal is still published 6 days a week, and I feel like the content of the journalism presents the stories in a more traditional journalistic style where both sides of an issue are examined, and it's a little more thorough, in-depth reporting. My preference would be the Salina Journal.
I guess my thought on that is there's very little in the Salina Journal today that's truly local. Where 311 is 100% local
And it's locally owned.
and locally printed.
I don't, yeah, the sad thing is neither one are very widely read, so that's the sad part compared to what we used to have, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the end, beyond this commission, it's all going to be online. So it's kind of,
Well, you know, I'm not as swayed as much. I mean, I think it's nice that it's locally owned, but I'm more concerned about what service it provides to me. And while I'm traditionally a traditionalist, finding something local in the Salina Journal now is very hard to do. You know, we're used to looking for it because it's what's been here forever. But, you know, we used to go downtown and stand in line to buy plane tickets. Now we pull out our cell phones and buy a plane ticket. You know, times have changed. I think most people will go to the city website, and I see probably 95% of our noticing is going to occur on the website, which, you know, if I wanted to find out something about Target, I'm not going to look in the newspaper. I'm going to go to target.com or whatever it's called. You know, so it's for the relatively few announcements that'll end up in the paper. I'm giving the edge to 311, you know, kind of 51-49, but in a few seconds I'm going to have to raise my hand one way or the other. So yeah, that's where I'm leaning right now, unless somebody wants to convince me otherwise.
I think it's worth mentioning that this portion of what we're publishing would be available free to the public from Salina 311, and it would essentially be the same wall as that we currently have for our website, which is, you know, you submit your email address, and then there's an account that you have, but it's free. And you know, my thought on this is that we've already embraced the online portion of disseminating information to the public. And I think the business model of Salina 311 is more in line with that thought process. And obviously, I've already voiced in previous meeting that you know, locally owned, and it's just, it has a lot more local news that resonates with me a bit more. And I grew up with the Salina Journal. I mean, I have nothing against the publication. It's just, it's not the publication that it used to be. It's not the one that we grew up with. And I'm not saying it's a poor publication. I'm just saying that maybe in this particular instance, Salina 311 serves our purpose a little better.
The thing that kind of sways me towards Salina 311 is I do believe the Salina Journal with the 6 days and the way they publish is a little more traditional. But the fact that if the public can get to it on the public side without having to purchase the subscription, I think is a benefit. And that's the way it sounds, that it's out there. You can go to the Salina 311. They have some things that are public, some things that are members. If it's open to the public, I think that's a benefit. It opens up to the entire community. So I would probably lean towards the Salina 311.
Two other quick questions. Does the library carry Salina 311? Free, 'cause I'm assuming the journal, if you didn't have any money, you could go into the library and read the journal free of charge? I'm sorry.
they do.
They do? Okay, thank you. Right, because there should not be a cost to find out what the city's doing. And the second thing, would there ever be, I hate to use the word ever, but a situation where we would publish something in the newspaper of general circulation and not have it on our website anyway, since it doesn't really cost us any more to put it on the website?
Nothing comes to mind. The conversations that staff have had have been, redundancy on the city's website, and then we've had some conversation about how long you leave it on the city website as well, because we can just kind of keep a running list of those publications. So I don't think that we've identified any instance where we wouldn't duplicate on the city's website, but I'll stand corrected if staff knows of an example.
No, the only concern we've had is eventually they get so many of them on the city website. So the tentative plan right now is to keep them up for at least a year. And then at the end of that point, we may archive them or put them in, but they'll still be available. We just don't want to make it after several years where it's overwhelming and people aren't able to even see the latest ones. But since there's relatively no cost to us, we can be able to archive them for a considerable amount of time.
Okay, do we
On
have,
the city's website, at the homepage, the bottom, there's these tabs across, and one of them is notices and publications, and that populates that, and they're very large files. I noticed they're PDF files. And back to the choice of the papers, when we first discussed this a few months ago, our former clerk expressed frustration with the Salina Journal's customer service and just the whole process. And I think that says a lot to think of our staff, that when they do have to publish something, that they can call someone local.
okay, do we have any comments or questions from the public on this item? Okay, I will.
Does Salina 311 have a physical office in Salina? Like, could I go out in the sidewalk right now and go to their office? Because I've been able to find it.
Home.
Huh?
I think they work from home.
I'm not aware of one, but in all honesty, they come to us more than we go to them. But everything I've seen is remote, phone, electronic.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for action. Let's see where it goes.
Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 23-8180, designating the official city newspaper for the City of Salina to be the City of Salina website, and designate an alternative newspaper for those notices not required to be in the official city newspaper, and I would move that be Salina 311.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8180, hereby designating the City of Salina, Kansas website as the official city newspaper and designating Salina 311 as a newspaper of publication for all required public notices other than those statutorily required to be published in the official city newspaper. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
That item passes 4-1. Thank you. That will lead us to item 7.1.
Item 7.1, consider the application submitted by Salina Destination Development LLC and approve ordinance number 23-11189, annexing a 41.92 acre tract of land located on the west side of Virginia Drive, south of West Magnolia Road.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This annexation request is located in an area that staff sometimes refer to as the donut hole, which is an island of unannexed property that's located on both sides of West Magnolia, west of I-135. Now, that donut hole is bordered by the city on all four sides, but the majority of the property is outside of the city limits. The exceptions to that are the Magnolia Commons addition, where the Menard store is located, and the Premier Edition, which is the location of American Ag Credit. In response to the Menard's project in 2010, the City Commission approved a very large benefit district that involved construction of a water line loop, sanitary sewer extensions, and some drainage improvements to help facilitate the Menard's project. And it had a 235-acre benefit area, which included this 41-acre parcel that Salina Destination is requesting to be annexed. So they have filed an application for voluntary annexation in order to connect to city utilities and obtain full municipal services for a proposed residential subdivision. They have filed applications with that to rezone and plat property for a future housing development. They are proposing to create an 11.2 acre building lot within the annexed area for construction of a 250 unit apartment complex. This property, if annexed, will retain its agricultural zoning upon annexation until the platting and rezoning process is complete. This is a voluntary annexation. It's contiguous with the existing city limits, and there's no special notice or hearing requirements. As a companion item, 7.2 in today's agenda is the annual corporate boundary resolution. And with the expectation that this annexation request will be approved, the city corporate boundary resolution includes this area. So if you approve this evening, the annexation ordinance will be published and take effect before year end, and the effective date of the corporate limits resolution will be December 31st of this year. We've noted in the report that this property would be subject to several benefit fees that were assessed in 2010 for those public infrastructure improvements. And so if this property is annexed, it would be subject to the city's property tax mill levy, and it would be subject to having those benefit fees collected when the property develops. The city is already maintaining Virginia Drive in this area, and we're already maintaining all the existing public utility lines, so this does not create any new maintenance responsibilities. The Planning Commission met and considered this request at a meeting on December 5th, 2023, and they approved a motion recommending that this property be annexed into the corporate limits of the city. Your options this afternoon would be to approve the attached ordinance annexing this 41.92 acre tract into the city. You could postpone consideration of this annexation request to a future meeting date to allow additional information to be provided about the request, or you could decline to approve the ordinance, which would leave the property outside the city limits. So our recommendation would be to approve this ordinance at today's meeting so it can be included in the year-end corporate boundary resolution. So with that, I'd be open to any questions you have about the annexation piece. But it is 41 acres along West Dry Creek and between Virginia Drive and the Dry Creek Channel.
Shouldn't be a surprise. We've been talking about this piece of ground for several years, so I'll look to my right, see if there's any questions or comments from my commissioners.
No questions.
Okay. Okay, comments or questions from the public?
Thought you might be familiar with this property.
If not, we'd fallen asleep somewhere. So I will look to legal counsel. We all have on here, based on the action we have recently taken dealing with first and second reading on ordinances. This one shows a first reading on the blue sheet. If you go to page 5, we were combining first and second readings. Has that taken effect as of today?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, the ordinance that you adopted making that change from the 2 readings to the single reading consistently with state statute was published yesterday morning. So it is now in effect, and that is what prompts the transition to the single reading as being the means of enacting the ordinance.
So,
Yeah, that option 1 language there is just an error on my part under
that's-
having to change old habits.
It wasn't an error until
Until
yesterday.
Yeah,
That's
on
right.
Thursday-
So
on
when
Thursday it
you
was-
wrote it, it was
When I
not an
wrote
error.
it was
On
correct.
Thursday, it was correct. Today, it,
So I'm going to let you off on that one, Mr. Andrews. So, okay, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mr. Mayor, I move this commission approve ordinance number 23-11189, annexing this 41.92 acre tract into the city. This would allow development on this site to connect to public utilities and bring this site under administrative, regulatory, and law enforcement jurisdiction of the city, and would ensure the emergency response to the site is provided by the Salina Police and Fire Departments during construction.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11189, annexing a 41.92 acre tract into the city. This would allow development of this site to connect to public utilities and bring this site under the administrative, regulatory, and law enforcement jurisdiction of the city, and would ensure that emergency response to this site is provided by the Salina Police and Fire Department during construction. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Lankowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 7.2.
Item 7.2, approve resolution number 23-8177, describing the corporate limits of the City of Salina for 2023.
Mr. Stack.
Yes, thank you again, Mayor and Commissioners. As Dean alluded to, we've tried to tee these up in the right order for the right describing of our city limits. So with the previous approval item, we were able to include the area of Dry Creek subdivision there on this resolution. So we prepared it with that accordingly, and then we'll wait to publish that later next week, prior to the end of the year, once this annexation takes place and is official. So just to describe a few of the areas, Jacob, I'm going to pull up the map if you want. For our areas that we annexed this year, we had 4 areas, one of them being the Centennial Road right-of-way. So if we're working on Centennial Road, south part of town right now, south part of Salina, right north of Waterwell. So that's down here. This was our first annexation, which was basically the county portion of that roadway, more or less, and then the right-of-way to build that road. We haven't annexed any more to the east of that yet, but just the roadway. The second part was Beck's addition, which is, of course, up here at the top. We talked about Beck's a few weeks ago. Third subdivision was Lakeview Estates. Sorry, third was really Beck's. Second was Lakeview Estates, which is right over here. So right around the north of the old sand pits there, and Mr. Byquist's area, around Stone Lake, actually, more particularly. So, and then lastly is the one you did, or just approved today. So we have to do this every year, and as you can see, the corporate limits resolution is lengthy. It's very long. It's many pages. We have an interesting corporate boundary. Just if you look at that, all those red lines that my surveyor gets to describe every year. Luckily, it doesn't change a lot, so he can use last year's. But those red lines are not easy to describe for a surveyor. So we're glad he does this. Helps us be compliant with the ordinances, Kansas state statute, and stand for questions.
I'm just curious, who does this?
Yeah.
Because that person deserves an award or a medal.
That would be John Harvey.
John
He's the
Harvey is our city
surveyor.
surveyor, and it's interesting because
I
sometimes
don't think he goes out and measures it every year.
Every
I think
year,
he just
right.
adds to it, yeah.
it adds to it. This is true, but every now and then you'll get sometimes where we annex something and figure out, something was wrong in there years ago, and have to fix it at the time. So we've had that come up once or twice. So not going to say that couldn't happen again, but everywhere we've touched, he's tried to fix and get correct for each year.
And I did verify with the city manager, we had that portion up north where the, off of Old Highway 40, that they had accidentally
Yeah,
showed
river channel
when the channel
changed.
changed, they showed it, but it really hadn't changed on the
Right.
boundary, and that's been.
Yeah, wasn't that Broadway and North Street? Is that the one you're talking about, or further north?
Yeah, west of Broadway.
West of
and North
Broadway.
Street.
Broadway, yeah.
That area.
So
Mhm.
verified that was correct, so.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I'll wait
Go ahead.
till- I was just going to say quickly, Mr. Stack may be reluctant to go too far with it, but I can assure you that we all think of multiple things every day to ask Mr. Harvey to assist us with, and he is exceptional in his work, and can't say enough about what he does for the city, and not only for the engineering division, but for all the departments under any number of circumstances. So we're extremely fortunate to have him. The other thing I thought might be of quick interest, given the prior discussion regarding publications, if you look in the amendments to this statute that requires this annual exercise, you'll see that there was an amendment in 1987. This used to have to be by ordinance, which meant that you had to publish the entire legal description. The City of Salina initiated an amendment in 1987 to that statute that enables us to now, and ever since 1988, do this by resolution instead. So that's been a significant savings over the years.
Thank you.
A recent county commission meeting, when they heard the okay in the annexing the 42-acre site at Menards, there was discussion about why there's all the zigzag and why the city doesn't just do the whole thing. Can you explain why we don't do that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because my previous employment was City of Overland Park, and so quarter section, half section, section. They just went and somewhat forcefully annexed. So that is the other option, but most of the time, a lot of cities aren't in that interest and don't have the counties, some county citizens don't see that lightly many times. And anyone.
Well, I can see not wanting to be subject to the city's mill levy.
That and every one of those little areas has a property owner that's very much knows where they live, and they are not. It would be an interesting process that.
Well, I would add too that when we forcibly annex, there is a process whereby we have to consider available utilities and have a plan in which service can be provided. Voluntary annexation at the initiation of the property owner we can respond to. So it's not as easy as just drafting up the document. There's a lot of additional consideration and documentation that has to go with forcible annexation. That's not to say that in a particular instance we couldn't say it's in our growth pattern, it makes sense, it's something we want to pursue, but just kind of that widespread blanket annexation would represent a considerable amount of effort, more than you might first realize.
Okay, questions or comments from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Move we approve resolution number 23-8177 with an effective date of December 31st, 2023.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 23-8177 with an effective date of December 31st, 2023. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will lead us to item 7.3.
Item 7.3, approve ordinance number 23-11191, amending section 36-74A3B of the subdivision regulations to allow the city commission to determine whether public sidewalks must be installed or may be deferred through approval of a development agreement in cases where an existing abutting street meets the interim street standard, except for the existence of a public sidewalk abutting the proposed subdivision.
Mr. Andrew.
This application revisits the discussion we've had about the installation of public sidewalks on perimeter streets abutting new subdivisions. And back in 2016, after considerable study, the subdivision regulations were amended, and The term perimeter street and direct access perimeter street were defined. There were requirements set out for public street access points on those direct access street, for it is Ohio Street, and Ohio Street meets the applicable public street standard. We also had cases where a public street is improved at the time at the subdivision development, and then we have the third case where you have a public street that abuts a subdivision, but it doesn't meet the full city street requirement. And so the language allows a subdivision plat to be approved if all direct access perimeter streets will be improved to an alternate standard, and states that that alternate standard may not be less than the interim street standard. And that lesser standard is approved through the terms of a development agreement. So recently we had 3 subdivision plats. All 3 were commercial and not residential. And 2 of them were located on North Ohio, south of I-70, and the third one was on South 9th Street, south of Waterwell Road. They were on direct access perimeter streets, North Ohio and 9th Street, that met the interim street standard as to pavement width and thickness, but they don't have curb and gutter, and they lack public sidewalks. So each of the developers involved requested that their plats be referred to the City Commission for consideration of a development agreement that would allow their subdivision to be developed and would defer improvements to North Ohio and South 9th Street to a future date. And so as a body, you approved all 3 of those at the October 2nd, 2023 meeting. And so the effect of those was that those subdivisions could move forward with development with the streets left in their current street condition, but public sidewalks along North Ohio and South 9th would have to be constructed as part of the building permits issued for those properties. In the case of the Beck's addition and the Augustine additions, those developers and their representatives asked that their development agreements allow construction of the sidewalks to be deferred until the street had to be upgraded. And the standard for that was increase in traffic to 10,000 vehicles per day on North Ohio and 6,500 vehicles per day on South 9th Street. We also had the situation with the ADR addition where the subdivider was Salina Health Education Foundation, but the ultimate user is a utility company, and the utility company recently contacted staff and asked that their sidewalk requirement be deferred because they didn't want to build it as part of their building renovation. So staff responded that the subdivision regulations as they're currently drafted and adopted do not give you any discretion as to the timing and construction of those sidewalks. And the reason for that is that sidewalks on one side of a perimeter street are part of the interim street standard and the definition. And the other part is that the language says that a subdivision plat may only be approved if the abutting street is improved to not less than the interim street standard, and a sidewalk is needed to meet the interim street standard. Therefore, the sidewalk is not optional. And so Mr. Jeff Mays of Pro Realty filed an application for a text amendment to allow you, the City Commission, to determine whether public sidewalks must be installed or may be deferred through approval of a development agreement in cases where an existing street meets the interim standard except for the public sidewalk abutting. Mr. Mays was also representing Mark Augustine, who is a co-applicant on the application. So basically this presents a policy question for you that was discussed and considered. Essentially the 2 options are, 1, you take the sidewalk requirement out of the interim standard altogether, and that is not something that the applicants wanted or applied for, or the other, what they have applied for is to give the City Commission discretion to defer that public sidewalk requirement to a later time. And so this presents a policy question as to whether public sidewalks should be required in every single case where a subdivision is developed abutting an arterial or collector street that is a rural type section. So as currently written and adopted, the subdivision regulations don't give the Planning Commission or the City Commission any authority to defer or change the timing of that public sidewalk requirement. And so the application is requesting that the regulations be amended to allow the City Commission to defer that sidewalk construction requirement on a case-by-case basis. So we have provided some, just some background information. We discuss sidewalks frequently at public meetings. One of the request justifications is that if we build this, it will be a sidewalk to nowhere, it won't connect to anything. But the counter to that is that based on the city's incremental pace of development, sidewalks that appear to be going nowhere often do become a sidewalk to somewhere or result in connecting two destinations at some point in time. The other thing that we would note is that you have tasked city staff with identifying gaps in the sidewalk network throughout the city and have budgeted $150,000 annually to fill those gaps in. And the Public Works Department has identified the missing links in the system, and they have adopted a decision matrix, and they give top priority to proximity to schools, parks, and bus stops, and any locations where there's a worn path that indicates people are walking there. And so we attached the matrix to this report. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this question on December 5th. And following presentation of the staff report and comments from Mr. Mays and Mr. Augustine, and comments and questions from commissioners, the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of a text amendment that would give the City Commission the authority to defer construction of public sidewalks along a perimeter street that meets the city's interim standard. And so the desire was to give the City Commission the broadest discretion possible to make that determination on a case-by-case basis. And so in your, at the very end of your packet is the proposed text amendment, and what it does under the factors that you're supposed to consider in considering a development agreement adds under subsection B a third section that allows the potential for deferral of the installation of sidewalk required under the interim street standard based upon a finding that the public interest is not served by requiring construction of the sidewalk at the time of subdivision development. So what is proposed as an amendment would allow, when a development agreement comes forward, to allow you on a case-by-case basis to find that in this case the public interest is not served by requiring a construction at the time of building permit or subdivision development. So we have had quite a bit of contact from those affected. We have building permits pending for the Bex project. We have a building permit pending for Mr. Augustine's project, and we have a site plan for the Harley-Davidson building going to the Planning Commission tomorrow. And in their application, the utility company asked that the Planning Commission defer construction of the sidewalk, and we inform them that the Planning Commission doesn't have that authority as part of their site plan approval. So we are, because of the transitional meeting on January 8th, we expedited this and brought it to you today. It turns out neither of our applicants are in town and here to represent themselves, so the best representation would be in the minutes that are attached where we have comments from Mr. Mays.
Dean, Mr. Mace is
Oh,
online.
he is on? Okay. So we tried to reach out to him, so he is on via Zoom. Mr. Augustine, I believe, is out of town.
Yeah, he's here.
He's here too.
Yeah, he's here too. Okay. I got an anonymous reply, so that's even better. So I won't attempt to speak for the applicants. But essentially what I told the Planning Commission is that the question is whether the city should have subdivisions that are located on streets that don't have full curb and gutter, and whether we should be able to defer construction of the sidewalks as well as the curb and gutter. So that's really the question that this presents. So I'd be open to any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, why were sidewalks suggested on the interim street standard to begin with?
Well, the two examples that I gave in the packet of what I would consider to be the two examples where we have subdivisions, and you as a commission can judge for yourself, but one of the things that planning staff discussed with the planning commission is that there may be a distinction, and maybe the commission wants to make a distinction between a subdivision that's commercial or industrial and a subdivision that's residential. So if you look at the Magnolia Hills development on Markley Road does not have curb and gutter. Markley Road is an interim street. It meets the interim street standard, but it doesn't have curb and gutter. And we allowed the first phase of the subdivision to be built, and it had no sidewalks, walking paths, anything whatsoever. And Planning Commission and planning staff got contacted frequently by residents of that subdivision saying they felt trapped in their subdivision and they couldn't get out to get anywhere, except they couldn't ride a bike except to go out into Markley Road. And so we started out with a sidewalk and ended up with a bike path there. The other example is South Ohio Street abutting Southview Estates, where Ohio Street does not have curb and gutter, but it's paved, it's sufficiently wide, but a sidewalk was required on the east side to connect that subdivision up to the Schilling Road intersection. So, as I noted, that one option would be to just allow for interim street development with no sidewalk and just take it out of the definition.
Well,
But if you-
my question was, yeah, I'm assuming, and I don't know when these regulations were drawn up, but someone had a good reason for requiring sidewalks to be there. And I just don't see in a residential area what's changed in, I don't know, what, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever, however long this regulation has been in effect. You know, we talk about connectivity and all this stuff, and yet we make it easier to water down our rules. I mean, we're very schizophrenic on this. You know, we either want to have connectivity or we don't. The more options we put in to water down the regulations, I mean, every week it's exception to this, exception to that.
This is not watering down any regulation. The
You
regulation
give us the
is-
opportunity.
It gives you the opportunity to look at each situation individually based on its location and its
Right.
circumstances.
The only reason I would see us wanting to separate them would be the commercial out near the interstate. But the residential ones, I mean, you have a good rule, leave it alone.
So, and if it helps with some context, I think the interim street standard approach, we labored at greatly to draft that and staff that through the city commission. And it was a compromise from meeting full street standards as a condition of approval. And so at that time, there was a lot of conversation about what fell on which side of the line, what is something that could be compromised, and what was something that stayed in as an interim street standard. So at that time, sidewalks stayed in. Mr. Andrew referred to a phrase that's commonly used. I want to reassure you that the sidewalk question is not unique to Salina, and our answer that a sidewalk to nowhere will be a sidewalk to somewhere someday is a common refrain in city management and in planning, because communities find themselves debating the requirement on the front end and then the gaps on the back end. And it's not at all uncommon for communities to be asked to to not require sidewalks or require them on one side and not both sides of the streets. And I'm purely speculating, but as I drive the community, I think our changing policy administration, it's contributed to some of our sidewalk gaps that we have in the community today.
It just seems like the more the sidewalk gets delayed, the higher percentage of the price tag the city picks up when it is put in.
Yeah, in the interim street standard, the premise is that we have consents to specials, and when the threshold is met, then we have a mechanism in place to get the remaining improvements made, not at city expense. But part of the question is, how long will it take for that threshold to be met, for the required improvement to be invoked, and then the practicality of getting that benefit district formed at that time.
What would happen if we felt like there was a need for the sidewalks before the traffic count was met to get out, to move away from the interim street standards?
My first reaction.
I guess my question is, like, mainly dealing with residential, like, these examples we have here make complete sense to me that you wouldn't put sidewalks in because of where they're located. But if we had a residential area that was a little closer and all of a sudden it's filling in, but we didn't have the traffic count, is there a mechanism to trigger putting sidewalks in besides a traffic count?
Well, fair question, and I'm speculating a little bit. This is a development. There is a development agreement aspect to this, so it would add quite a bit of complexity. But theoretically, it might be possible to have another threshold associated with the sidewalk. I think the concern becomes just kind of an arbitrary, discretionary decision at some unspecified point out in the future. If we find ourselves without sufficient criteria in place and we feel strongly about it, then we probably are doing it at city expense.
Yeah.
If I recall, the parcel we just annexed for Salina Destination to build apartments, that it is in the development agreement to connect sidewalks. Is that right? You want to recall?
I honestly don't recall without going back and looking at it, but as part of the platting, that would be the expectation.
Yeah. But I think what the question we're hearing today, is just common sense. We really don't need a sidewalk out where there's just an industrial business. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're on the right track, case by case basis.
But when you have vehicle traffic counts determining sidewalks, the sidewalks aren't for the vehicles. In fact, they're to keep people out of the vehicles so that they can use alternate forms of transportation. You look at a sidewalk along Markley Road, it's one of our longer linear parks right now. People are out there walking, running, and you have the south end of that sidewalk right now does go nowhere other than almost to Schilling. Magnolia. But, it's truly been a case of build it and they will come. The sidewalk going north is, I'd say, quite frequently used. But that's going to be used a lot no matter what the vehicle count on Markley is, because, people are using it because they don't want to be in their vehicle. And they literally were an island there. I don't like having too many opportunities to exercise judgment, because historically you exercise judgment and that becomes the precedent. And you have that cow is out the barn, you can't pull it back. And
to follow up on the city manager's comment and the question from the mayor, I think it would be incumbent on city staff to come up with something through language. I guess the way that we would envision this being implemented in the future would continue to be through development agreements. So it would be incumbent on staff to come up for your review and approval alternate language or alternate trigger where the future sidewalk would have a trigger that is different than just traffic counts. It could be something like proximity to other sidewalks or in response to other projects. We could come up with a test that if you're within so many feet of the existing sidewalk network, then at that point, that's when the sidewalk has to be constructed. But I think it was pointed out at the Planning Commission meeting that the Beck site and the ADR site are 6,100 feet from the nearest sidewalk, which is well over a mile. It's a mile and a quarter. And so that's what makes those stand out. And so I don't think we would use traffic counts as the trigger for a sidewalk. I think we would use some sort of proximity to the built-up sidewalk network as the trigger.
So if we pass this today, does that allow you that flexibility in the development agreements, or will you be coming back to us with some?
The reason I kind of chuckled is you're giving
It
yourself as
allows
the
you
governing
the
body the
flexibility.
flexibility. None of this will be retroactive.
If
so then
you
we're
pass
coming
it, there's no
back.
reason to, because folks know they can always complain to us and we'll pass it. I would rather see the staff or planning commission or whoever would do this, get that language together, separate commercial from residential, proximity to the sidewalks, the triggers, and then bring that back and just table this, not table to postpone this.
Yeah, the problem is we need on some of these, we need an answer fairly quickly, or they're going to be required to put sidewalks in at this point, correct?
But that's what our rules are. You put, right? I mean,
correct me
it's-
if I'm wrong, they've all been approved with what they've submitted, but that all presumes sidewalks at the
But
moment.
that's their emergency, not ours. You know, we have a way of doing business here, and we don't have to change our way of business because someone else senses an urgency.
Well,
Because
this was.
once we make a policy here, you know, that becomes the new rule.
Right. But we can amend it, and I think.
But we never
Yes.
do. We never will.
This is a, just as previously on your agenda, you had a second reading for a text amendment dealing with group daycare homes. This is a text amendment. It has gone through the review process. There's been a public hearing by the Planning Commission. They've reviewed it and weighed in. So this has not been treated as an emergency. It's just followed the normal public hearing process, just the same as the group daycare text amendment that you saw previously.
Right, but if that was the end of the story, it wouldn't be here today. It's here today for our review. And if, you know, I have issues, I'd like the Planning Commission to go back. In fact, I would move that the Planning Commission revisit this and answering those. We haven't had public comment yet, but.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of when sidewalks have been deferred and that trigger point is hit and they've been required to put them in?
No, in the case of the Markley Road, it was just having sufficient residents and having sufficient residents there.
Were the residents assessed for that?
That was in the case of the one next to Wheatland Valley, that was split 50% between the city and 50% by the developers because it's a hike bike path. The one that's on South Ohio, that was funded as part of a KDOT project. But sidewalks are generally constructed as part of the subdivision development.
Well, I agree that, you know, we need to kind of separate industrial versus residential, where residential would be kind of more automatic.
Well, I guess I'd like to hear from the public and the applicants, but just speaking for myself, a deferral sounds reasonable. But I agree with the idea of a trigger in there. I mean, I think this policy question is going to take a little more massaging in the future to see what would bring this back to us to then make the sidewalk get put in. The deferral part of this just sounds somewhat permanent, except for the traffic counts. So I would task staff with bringing us another amendment to our rules to tighten this up. But what's being asked of us today seems reasonable. And it was also, sounds like the Planning Commission felt it was as well and passed it to us to decide it.
Okay, would anyone from the public like to comment, or an applicant?
If I could,
Okay.
one clarification before we go there is, as it relates to a application for a text amendment that's gone to the Planning Commission and come to the governing body with a recommendation from the Planning Commission, there is a process for the governing body to deviate from the Planning Commission's recommendation or essentially assign homework or ask that other things be followed up. But I just want to be abundantly clear on how that works. And I like to do that before public comment, just so they're aware of that process as well. So I need to draw on Mr. Andrew and Mr. Bankson just a little bit, but option number 3 in the staff report is the commission could send this item back to the Planning Commission for additional study and discussion based on guidance received from the City Commission. And so that's something that's available to you. It's been done in the past on occasion. I guess my question is it has to go back to the Planning Commission. In other scenarios, staff gets homework and we report back directly to the City Commission.
But at this point, the applicants will have to build the sidewalks, is that correct? Or wait for this process to play out? I mean, that's an expense to them, and it's also an infrastructure they've got to maintain in the future as well. So,
correct. So, generally, that is correct. I think part of this conversation, part of this discussion with the applicants, and something that we may need to staff through outside of this meeting or break, so staff can talk through it just a little bit, is where the applicants stand and whether they've executed the development agreement you previously approved, or whether they're holding out for a decision on this. But in either instance, that's all a process that we're working you through right now. They proceeded on the premise of the existing requirements.
Can you address number 2 under the action items?
Sure.
Because that sounds a little bit like where we're headed.
Right. There is a provision that the City Commission could deviate from the recommendation of the Planning Commission with a supermajority, essentially. So I suppose you could, and I'm looking for Mr. Andrew and Mr. Bankson to correct me if I'm wrong, I suppose you could postpone consideration. Based on your prior conversation, if that's what you're so inclined, you could postpone consideration, task staff with some homework reporting back to you, and then when the time comes, you have a supermajority of 4 out of the 5 of you, you could act without it being referred back to the Planning Commission.
If you look at number 2, I think it allows us to approve the ordinance with amendments.
Right, but it requires 4 affirmative votes out of the 5.
I mean, if that motion was made and let's say, because it seems like we're trying to distinguish between commercial and residential. Mm-hmm. It seems like number 2 would allow us to approve this ordinance for commercial properties and not for residential subdivisions.
Yeah, I think that is correct.
And it would take a 4-to-1 vote because it'd take a supermajority. Right?
Yes, I apologize. Okay. I was building on to that, kind of trying to read the tea leaves, that there was some interest in staff fleshing out additional criteria that I assume we wouldn't be able to amend into this action tonight. But
I'm trying to read the tea leaves and looking at there's potential 4 individuals, commissioners perhaps, that could live with the commercial at this point and not the residential.
Yes, and if that were the case, we need to.
Okay. I've even got one tea leaf I wasn't sure that might even be going along, so we might be a little closer.
I would just clarify for your benefit, the Planning Commission voted 4-to-1 to recommend approval. That would give you discretion in the case of every subdivision. The individual that voted against the motion was in favor of giving you the discretion. They just wanted it limited to non-residential subdivisions. So the Planning Commission was unanimous in wanting to give you more discretion and flexibility. but one of the members wanted to limit it to non-residential subdivisions only. The other 4 were comfortable with having it apply to all subdivisions.
And so if you can articulate the amendment clearly enough this evening and you have 4 votes, then yeah, I think that's workable. If it's, we have a concept, but we don't have it articulated to the point of a full amendment, then.
Well, let's hear from the public, and then we'll see if we can, we'll see if city attorney can come up with something, since he's got his head down there. It looks like he's writing, so. Okay. Please state your name and where you're from.
Mark Augustine, 148 Mount Barbara. I came back just for this meeting. So the development agreement that is in the process of being signed with the city for my addition has not been executed yet. So I would hope that there would be a chance to amend it if you decide to make this change recommended by the Planning Commission. It's about a $40,000 question for me, because that sidewalk that's in front of the storage complex that we're trying to build, and it doesn't go across the whole addition, as you know from the last meeting that we had, but it's $40,000 to build that sidewalk that everything has a life expectancy. And so by the time the sidewalk meets that, I would presume that it's probably needs to be replaced again. So the developer has the potential of spending the money twice in this situation, much like the other 2 people, additions that are looking at this as well. So the closest sidewalk to mine is the Hilton Garden Inn, and it's on the north side. So that's a long ways for an adjoining sidewalk at this point in time. And I was surprised as we worked through this process that it wasn't part of the original development agreement, but Dean Andrews did bring me up to speed on that. So I would like to clarify in the notes here, in previous communication with the city, the traffic count was stated to be 7,500, not 6,500 on South 9th Street. So I'd like the city to clarify what number we're shooting for. So I stand for questions for.
Okay. And I guess, Mr. Andrew, did you hear the traffic count question from Mr. Augustine?
I did not. I was visiting with Mr. Banks.
I knew you were, so that's why.
In previous communication, the traffic count was noted 7,500.
Then I will have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
Okay.
I believed it to be 6,500, but I will confirm that.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for coming back wherever you were.
Mr. Mays, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to do
excited.
this from here, gentlemen, so excuse me. But Jeff Mays, Compro Realty, 157 South 7, thank you for your time this afternoon. I guess, while I'm sensitive and very much in tune with the reservation, the idea is that if an application comes in the future that doesn't make sense, very similar to what we're talking about here, again, in terms of the Beck subdivision and the ADR subdivision, we're 6,200 feet away from an adjoining sidewalk, 1. 2, there's, I don't know the exact lineal foot of floodplain between us and them, which is going to limit, if not eliminate entirely, which would be my expectation, any future development for any other sidewalk for connectivity out there. So in working with staff through all of these processes, staff told us very clearly that we understand, but there is nothing we can do about this. Our hands are tied, city commission's hands are tied, and this application really, to Commissioner Longbine's point, is, from my standpoint, is nothing more than allowing some common sense to be implied to give you the flexibility to not force something like this. I mean, Mr. Augustine just indicated $40,000 to put that sidewalk in. Nobody has a problem with the idea of a sidewalk when given its time, but to go out there and put all these thousands of dollars in sidewalks that literally are to nowhere, while I understand it'll be to somewhere someday, then we have no problem in stepping up and saying, okay, we'll put the sidewalk in now that now that it is a sidewalk to somewhere. I don't think any developer would. As you recall, These development agreements are incredibly succinct and they're very detailed, to Mr. Bankston's credit and Mr. Andrews' credit. I mean, they are very succinct in what they call out and what is required by us for doing the street. So while I understand, and I appreciate Mr. Andrew clarifying, the one vote nay with the planning commission was he wanted to keep it just residential, but let the commercial industrial, fall back on your guys' good, the city commission's good discretion. And again, I'm sensitive to we've got a policy and now we're getting away from it. The policies that exist today doesn't allow you to apply any common sense. And it's very difficult to explain to people why you got to go do this when you look at it. You go north of the Bex project and it's Foley and it's developed and there is no sidewalk and we've got no ability of staff to require them. So case and an ADR's case, truly a sidewalk to nowhere, but there's nothing that can be done without your action tonight. Ms. Driscoll said, Jeff, we get it, but the only way we can fix it is this application, and that's why we're before you today, is just simply to say, let us help you make good decisions in the future rather than this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mays. Any questions for Mr. Mays? Okay, any other comments or questions from the public? Okay, I will bring it back to the commission. I'm going to look at legal counsel for...
Mayor, may I have what I think will take about 60 seconds to confer with the city manager without appearing not to be paying full attention to the commission?
I guess in the courtroom, we would play that little white noise sound.
This is when they walk up and hold the mic. Yes.
Phrase, in the case of a non-residential subdivision, the potential for, he had thought here, whatever, I think that's maybe your call.
This is why we have legal counsel in the room with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Residential versus multifamily versus mixed. Definitionally,
That's why I used the word non-residential, because it would imply commercial and industrial, but would not include apartments. Augustine are all non-residential subdivisions were assigned destination as a residential subdivision. You could, as a substitute, you could say commercial and industrial subdivision.
no, I like the non-residential approach better. I'm just trying to make sure we aren't unintentionally.
It would not include anything that was multifamily, because that would be considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be, we can run straight through after this.
Yeah.
Mr. Scragg, would it be beneficial if we took a 5-minute break, then we can finish up with our stuff following?
We are getting close, but yeah, that'd be
Okay,
terrific.
let's take about a 5-minute break, allow them to finish up, and then once we get back, we'll be able to run through the rest of our agenda. So we'll be back in here about 10 till 6. Okay, we're back in session. I see our attorney still writing. There you go. Well, just make sure we can read it is going to be the important part, so. We lost our city manager. So I guess while we're waiting on the city manager, is there, we can have discussion. Does anybody have a feel for how they'd
Yes.
on this? Again, just reading the tea leaves, do we kind of feel like we want to?
I'd like to enter a motion realizing that
he's gonna,
the wording will be properly modified by the city attorney. Would you like me to?
Well, let's see what.
I think we have a run at some suggested language, if we understand what was asked of us or what it is you're trying to accomplish. Mr. Bankston's the one that wordsmithed it, so and it's his handwriting, so I'll let him.
Well, the thought was at the outset of the Roman 3 that is highlighted on your copies of the proposed ordinance. They're on page 3 of the proposed ordinance.
3 pages in from the back of the staff report on page 3 of the draft ordinance. Section 3, sub B, sub Roman I in red.
Okay.
And if it's helpful for everyone listening or who might not have that in front of them, and that's actually a prior version from what is in proposed. If we can get to the ordinance, the draft ordinance is what we're reaching for. What's going on there in the ordinance is that
Do not see a triple I.
It's the 4th page from the very end.
3rd page from the back of our packet.
It has page 3 on
It
the
has
bottom.
page 3, yeah.
3 is 6.
It's got red, it's redlined, under direct access perimeter streets and connecting
Thank you,
streets.
got it.
Okay, there it is. Okay.
And we have it on the screen now as well.
that was the draft approach as submitted in the packet. Subpoint A above that anticipates or introduces the potential utilization of a subdivision or of a development agreement. And subpoint B then speaks of the particulars with regard to the development agreement. That is what prompted us to add as the proposed subpoint Roman 3, as it reads presently, for everybody's benefit, it now says the potential for deferral of the installation of sidewalk required under the interim street standard based upon a finding that the public interest is not served by requiring construction of the sidewalk at the time of subdivision development. That does not distinguish between the type of subdivision. And as I believe we understood, the commission's thought was to look to make the distinction as between the residential and any non-residential subdivisions. We also recognize that you have, as you know, the potential for mixed uses in a single subdivision. So the thought was to preface the statement that you see in red with the following language that would say, in the case of a non-residential subdivision or a non-residential component of a mixed-use subdivision, the potential for deferral, so on and so forth, as it reads currently, would apply. So the limitation at the outset of the phrase or the sentence would keep it to non-residential subdivisions or the non-residential component of a mixed-use subdivision.
So then if I could, I'd offer 3 points. One, all this does is create the possibility for that to be a negotiating point in a development agreement to be entered into. Secondly, it could be the same threshold as the rest of the street standards, or it could be an alternate threshold. And then in that mixed-use scenario, we're just trying to identify that possibility now, recognizing the specifics are going to be very important. It doesn't create a presumption that you could have a mixed use of residential and commercial and you just carve out segments of sidewalk as it corresponds to the zoning. That's still all to be sorted out as part of the development agreement negotiation.
I'm okay with that. Other commissioners?
Yes, I agree. To have a formal.
So we need to put that into a formal
And
motion.
maybe I should make a fourth point for those listening at home or the development community, and that is you still would, the governing body, whoever that is at the time, would still have the discretion of saying, given this particular commercial or industrial location, we think sidewalks should be required on day one.
It just gives you the option not to require them in the development agreement.
Well, I will I move that the commission approve ordinance number 23-11191 with the amended language as just read to us by the city attorney in section 1, is that subsection B, Roman numeral 3, if I identified that correctly. Probably have one adjective incorrect in there.
I believe you have generally. It is section 36-74, sub-paragraph A, 3, small b, Roman 3.
If you'd give me just 30 more minutes, I would come up with that. So,
Do I need a second?
if someone's so inclined, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to try to repeat all that because I'm still but we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11191 with amendments as stated by legal counsel as to, I'm going to see subparagraph 3B, Roman numeral 3.
And Mayor, if you would like for me to quickly
read
that,
through
I'm
that
happy
again.
to
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
Okay. That would add at the beginning of that currently proposed language with the limitation that reads, in the case of a non-residential subdivision or a non-residential component of a mixed-use subdivision. And then it continues to read as appears in your, before you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Lankwitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick?
Aye. Okay, that passes 5-0. Thank you to staff for amending that on the fly. I appreciate that. So that will lead us to item 7.4.
Item 7.4, accept offered street right-of-way and easement dedications from South Ohio Land LLC to serve a proposed replat of Lot 5, Block 5, and Lots 1 and 2, Block 6 of the corrected plat of Liberty Edition Number 2 to create 5 platted building lots on a 61.9-acre tract of land located on the west side of South Ohio Street, south of Schilling Road, to be platted and known as Liberty Edition Number 3.
Okay, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This replat has been filed by Mr. James Hall on behalf of South Ohio Land LLC. And South Ohio Land LLC owns and has over time developed property at the southwest corner of Schilling Road and Ohio Street. And in the northern portion of that subdivision around Cortland Circle is an accounting firm that keeps changing its name, but now last I checked was Pinion, and originally Kennedy and Co. And then we also have the Sunflower Bank property in that location. And so the southern portion of the property south of Cortland Circle has never developed, and it had a street called McIntosh that connected from South Ohio over to Progress Drive that comes north from Waterwell Road, goes by Crestwood. That street is a paper street. It's never been built since this plat was finalized in 2005. What Mr. Hall would like to do is look at that south area and reconfigure the lots there, and the plan is to move McIntosh Street to the south and then to create lots on either side of it. And right now there's a sweeping curve where McIntosh connects into Progress Drive. That would be converted into a 90-degree intersection. The west lot would be substantially unchanged. Also, at the time of platting, there was restricted access dedicated on all along South Ohio, and the applicant is requesting an additional curb cut on Ohio south of McIntosh. So the direct access perimeter street here is South Ohio. However, this is a 2003 subdivision, and the developer has a vested right to develop under the improvement standards were in place at that time. The City Commission entered into an annexation agreement in 2003, and in that agreement, since the South Ohio land was paying for and was assessed for the improvements made to Schilling Road, that annexation agreement, the city agreed not to assess South Ohio land for any improvements to South Ohio. So again, the role of the City Commission here is to look at the vacations and dedications. And so this replat would vacate the existing unbuilt McIntosh Street right-of-way west of Ohio and the existing unpaved right-of-way for Progress Drive north of the realigned McIntosh Street. It would also vacate an existing 20-foot utility easement on the north side of McIntosh, and it would also vacate a restricted access on a 30-foot opening on Ohio. The applicant would then be dedicating new right-of-way for relocated McIntosh Street and a new 20-foot utility easement being dedicated along along the north side of McIntosh. So what is needed to allow this area to develop is there is a 12-inch water line in South Ohio. The applicant here would connect to that line and bring it into the subdivision and run it over to the 20-inch line by the drainage ditch, creating a loop. There would be a public sewer to serve the lots on McIntosh. There would be the construction of McIntosh Street itself. And then we wanted to point out that as part of the annexation agreement, in exchange for the right-of-way dedicated for that massive north-south drainage easement, the City Commission at the time agreed that the city would pay the cost for spanning that ditch with a box culvert. So in terms of that would be the primary fiscal impact if McIntosh Street is built, that the city would pick up the share of that involved the box culvert crossing. The Planning Commission reviewed this at their December 5th meeting and approved the replat as proposed, subject to the infrastructure requirements set out in Condition 1. All the utilities placed in this subdivision would have to be underground, and there is a cost recovery fee from a previous utility project that lots in this subdivision are subject to. And so if you concurred with the action of the Planning Commission, a motion should be made to, first of all, accept the dedicated offered street right-of-way and utility easement dedications, but also to approve the vacation of the existing McIntosh Street and vacation of a portion of Progress Drive, and to authorize the mayor to sign the plat. So with that, I'd be open to any questions that commissioners might have. We have Mr. Hall here and his engineer. We've been working closely with them on trying to make this realignment all fit together, and we think it's a better plan in terms of allowing McIntosh Street to serve multiple lots instead of the current alignment, which is not very flexible.
Okay, any questions?
This McIntosh Street, it will connect to Ohio?
Yes,
Eventually?
it will. There's a gap. Salina Economic Development Corporation, or the Chamber of Commerce, owns property south of this on the west side of Progress Drive. So if you drive on Progress Drive north of Waterwell, it just ends at a barricade. That is someday supposed to be extended north and then would tie into McIntosh, and then McIntosh would run from there over to Ohio. But timing-wise, it just has not happened yet. This will be the first step towards getting that connection made. And Mr. Hall can elaborate, but it's my understanding that we have a potential use for the west lot in this subdivision, so it will be necessary to build McIntosh Street west from Ohio to access that lot.
On the blue sheet, you state, and the break in access on Ohio Street.
Yeah, so the current plat, if you look in your packet and you see the corrected plat of Liberty Edition number 2, there's restricted access along the entire Ohio Street frontage, which means there's no driveways allowed anywhere along that frontage on Ohio. And the applicant on their replat has proposed a driveway opening south of McIntosh Street to serve Lot 1, Block 3.
That's just different language than I've seen before when you're saying a break in access. I guess a lot of times we'd refer to that kind of as a curb cut, however you want to
Yes,
access
it is a curb cut, and in the statute, it's something that requires either a vacation action or a replat. In this case, the replat is breaking that restricted access in that location, but the purpose would be to allow a driveway.
It says a
curb cut.
break in access. It's really a break in the restricted access.
Break in restricted access.
Restricted access makes more sense. Okay. Okay. Any comments from the public or the applicant? You've sat here this long, you might as well have say something, hadn't you?
James Hall, 1525 East North Street. Commissioners and Mayor, thank you all for hearing this today. 2003 was a long time ago. I've had time to reflect on how we did this plat the first time. Wish in the beginning we'd have put the road in the middle where we did, where we're proposing now, so that you could use it from both sides, as it is much better intended. And that's what we're doing. We've spent a lot of time on this, and would hope you would work with us and make this happen. Thanks.
Any other comments from the public? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mr. Mayor, I move to accept the offered street right-of-way and utility easement dedications to approve the vacation of the existing McIntosh Street and a portion of Progress Drive and the break in restricted access on Ohio Street, to authorize the mayor to sign the plat on behalf of the city. And the alternative, the city commission could decline, or
I think that's where you stop.
yeah, disregard that last phrase.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Offer Street right-of-way and utility easement dedications, to approve the vacation of the existing McIntosh Street and a portion of Progress Drive, and the break-in restricted access on Ohio Street, and authorize the mayor to sign the plat on behalf of the city. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. Thank you very much. That will lead us to item 7.5.
Item 7.5, authorize the mayor to execute a transferee agreement with the Hive, Salon, and Spa LLC and Salina 2020, Inc.
Okay, Mr. Scragg.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This item and the item that follows it both relate to financing mechanisms that are in place for the downtown redevelopment project, commonly referred to as just the downtown project or the Star Bond project. And there is detailed information about kind of the mechanics and the detail of that financing. By way of summary, what I would tell you is we entered into a master agreement with the master developers, which is Salina 2020, comprised of local individuals that are serving in the master developer role in addition to their full-time jobs doing other things. We then entered into a supplemental agreement that fleshed out additional details, and all of that was written on the premise that it was an agreement between the city and the master developer, but with a recognition that project by project, the rights and responsibilities of that master development could be transferred to a particular project, and we refer to those as transferee agreements. And so, as kind of an overview, by my estimation, we use 4 different forms of financing. We had 6 different authorizations that took place, and we agreed to form 12 individual funds to be administered with the different funds that are available. So obviously we used Star Bond financing. That was the biggest and the most high profile. We used New Markets tax credit financing. We used tax increment financing, and that's broken out for the Homewood Suites Hotel project, a segregation of funds for the possible use of for apartment development if the right proposal comes along, the Old Chicago project, and then there is a TIF fund for new business development in the downtown. And we also use 3 community improvement districts, which authorize the levying of sales tax above and beyond the base sales tax and the use of those proceeds for eligible purposes. One of those CIDs at 1% was for the hotel project. Another CID at 1% was for the alley project. And then another CID was for downtown purposes, further broken out for Old Chicago, maintenance, security, and programming that we've entered into an agreement with Salina Salina Downtown Inc. I'm mixing my projects here. We then also created a CID fund for new retail and a CID fund for existing retail. And as I mentioned, there's a summary document that's attached to the staff report that goes in over it in greater detail, pulls out the specific excerpts from the different agreements that are applicable, and it also then provides you with the estimated funds to be generated in each one of those funds at the time that we entered into the development agreement. I would note that our performance as of late is exceeding those projections, and so we're at the completion of this project expect that we would exceed those estimated dollar amounts. With respect to the first item on the agenda, the Hive, Salon, and Spa, I should back up a little bit. The development agreement also then empowers the master developer to work with prospective businesses and consider applications for transferee agreements to make use of the various funds as spelled out by the agreement. And so the master developer works with a prospective business or development. They submit an application. There are criteria that are specified in terms of goals and objectives that we're trying to accomplish. And then there's a provision that they confer with the city manager, and if there's concurrence, bring all that forward to the city commission for consideration of a transferee agreement. So that's where we find ourselves today with respect to the Hive and Salon and Spa. It's proposed to, in their application, the master developer's letter of support and their narrative about the goals and objectives that it meets are all attached to my staff report and have been provided to you. So the recommended fund to be used is the new business TIF fund The recommendation from the master developer is an award of $157,253 plus 5% annual interest to be paid out over the remainder of the TIF district term. So that's where the 16-year term comes from. The other thing that I would tell you is, well, I should say, and that applies to a project cost of approximately $560,000 overall. Two things that I would tell you is that this is all pay-as-you-go. The way this has all been structured is a clear recognition in the development agreement and the transferee agreements that the funds are only due and payable in the event that they are received and available. And then there's a prioritization. As transferee agreements are executed, a priority order is established for the different transferees in the event that funding should fall somewhere along that spectrum of financial commitments. So they would go in line along with the other transferees, and then they'd be subject to the pay-go provisions. In the financial note, I provided for you, well, the other thing I would tell you is that $157,253 over that 16-year term equates to $9,828 per year plus the interest calculation. And the transferees that already have agreements out of this particular fund are Barolo Grill in the amount of $125,000, Grassroots Development, which was a renovation of building storefronts in the amount of $296,750, and the Yard in the amount of $250,000. So those three total $671,000. The approximate balance of this particular fund at the moment is $1,675,000, so it far exceeds that current commitment plus the current request. I know that Guy Walker and Larry Brigham are here on behalf of Salina 2020 as the master developers, and there's also representatives of the Hive here in attendance as well. Certainly want to acknowledge them and give them the opportunity to address you or answer any questions you might have. And then we've identified kind of that standard set of options for your consideration. You could authorize the mayor to execute the agreement. You could do that with amendments as you deem appropriate, and as we can work out, you could postpone consideration and to a specified date and time and provide us with direction on additional information that you'd like, return to you, or you could vote to deny, resulting in the request for the approval of the transferee agreement and the funding being denied as currently submitted. I did acknowledge in my staff report, in light of the ongoing role and efforts of Salina 2020 as the master developers, the pay-as-you-go format of the various incentives, the level and activity and interest in those funds, we're trying to continue to build and support interest, and Salina 2020's explanation of their efforts and their specific request, I would recommend option number 1 for your consideration, which is approval of the transferee agreement. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions, and I'll admit I'll probably be pretty quick to call on the master developers to help answer some.
Questions?
No questions.
These funds, would they be at the discretion of the owners to do whatever with, or would that be to go to pay off their business loan to start the business?
Yes, it is for the specified purposes. In this particular case, with the project being completed, it's more a case of confirming those expenses were incurred, and then it would be applied to those. In a project where it's more speculative and it hasn't been completed, there's a whole ongoing certification of cost mechanism that we would have as well to confirm that the identified costs have been incurred. There is language in the transfer agreement about some percentage allowances for a percentage of deviation within a line item, but the expectation is it's dialed into the particular approved expenses.
And I guess my concern with this item is the beauty salon does not collect any CID taxes or anything, do they?
The CID would be on retail sales, so presumably there would be some, but we've had I've had that conversation with the master developers on a number of projects, and I might ask them to kind of speak to it. Part of our conversation has been trying to build that foot traffic, that activity, that vibrance in the downtown, but I would certainly call on Guy or Larry to elaborate.
Well, you want to talk, go ahead. 'Cause that was going to be one of my questions, so you might, yeah.
Okay.
Come on.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Well, thank Guy Walker, 500 Graves Boulevard, Salina, Kansas, and always want to thank you all for your time and consideration of these projects. And would apologize for the timeliness of this one. We typically try to be here earlier in the process, and certainly that's on us. Larry and I were a little slow on this one, and but I would want to say the applicants were very responsive and were very attentive, and I think both can attest to the fact that they were, the incentives were a big part of their decision to locate downtown and to take on the projects that they did. We're working on more too. I mean, we've got a few other applicants, so we'll certainly do our best to be here before you earlier in the process. Like I said, yeah, excited about this one. I mean, I think to answer your question, I think there, as Mike mentioned, retail to the extent that the Hive sells retail products, so like shampoo and those sorts of things, it is taxable. But I think you're right. Like the service side of it is not taxable. But the way we looked at this is that was the reason for the using the new business TIF fund instead of the CID fund, because the improvement, almost all of the expense on that budget of $559,000 was spent on the building. And so there's no question, their property taxes went up, and the TIF collects that increment. And then that's used to, as Mike mentioned, to reimburse for some of the costs. So we feel like that's kind of why it was the better fit. In fact, that's one of the reasons we're a little bit late to you. We have a committee. I don't know if y'all remember that, but there's members of Salina 2020, and then there's also a representative of Salina Downtown Inc., the Chamber of Commerce, and the Salina Economic Development Organization. And so there was some questions about how, what is the proper application? And so after going in front of that committee, we in working with the applicant, we decided that the TIF was a better fit because of the fact that it's more related to the fact that they're spending money on the building. They're raising the tax base. I have my letter here because that was we certainly understand that that's a question, and we looked back at the goals and objectives from the original development agreement, and some of those, they were highlighted, I think, in our letter of support, but attract capital investment that it increases the future tax base, attract capital investment that enhances the aesthetic quality of downtown, attract developers with the financial capacity to complete their proposed project, and so on. So that's why we felt like it was a good fit for that. And in addition, they have second floor space that they rent to as an apartment, so bringing residents downtown. So, trying to answer your question. I'd be happy to answer any others.
Yeah, it made sense to me that this one, because the new business TIF fund comes out of the property taxes, not out of sales tax. And now the next one we look at is coming out of the CID, which is a sales fund. So that's a different type of business, and it's looking at a different type of cash flow for the downtown, I guess.
And for what it's worth, and Guy's made the point, but a lot of these projects previously and these and most likely the ones going forward represent a significant investment in renovation of physical space in the downtown. So, some of the conversation's been the longevity, the what benefits going to the businesses, but in the end, we're getting investment in physical structures that we have not necessarily seen historically.
Yeah, that's a good point. I appreciate you saying that because it is important. I think as you look at a lot of the buildings downtown had a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance, and some still do. So certainly incentivizing people to take these projects on is important. I can attest to the fact that in these older buildings, nothing goes the way that you think it will, and you typically end up spending far more than you initially planned. So these incentives are certainly helpful to continue the momentum that we have, and hope to be back before you soon with some exciting ones as well.
Was this building, maybe that Mr. Brigham can answer this, was this originally Smile a Minute photo?
I think it was called Fast. It was a photo operating place, yes.
I couldn't hear.
Yeah, she said it was a photo operating place. I think, was it Fast Focus?
It was like Fast, it was some type of...
You can come up, Nikki. I was going to say, the applicant's here.
I'm thinking it was Smile a Minute, but that goes back many years.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm actually, I love this. I get really excited to talk about the Hive. And one of the big things that I do is I actually... I teach my girls, we have classes, and one of the big classes that we have a class called The Why. And I big and bold on the front page of the class, I say we are more than just a hair salon. So it's always really exciting to hear the Hive referred to as a beauty shop or hair salon, or it's just a hair salon. My goal is that we're so much more than that. So my goal is that even if you don't come to the Hive for a hair service, because let's face it, guys are the most loyal. You probably have gone to your same lady for a really long time. You probably love her. Your wife has probably gone to the same lady for a really long time. But my goal is that even if you don't come to us for a service, you know about us. We do a lot of community involvement things. So since we've been open, it was a year in April. We've donated to CAPS. We've donated to DVAC. We've donated to the Homestead Act here locally. So we try to donate to local things by doing daddy-daughter classes where we bring in local dads and we teach them how to style their daughter's hair. We like to do that at the beginning of the school year. We bring in moms and show them dance styles that they might not know how to do. We also, we do downtown events like the wine walk. We had a huge cotton candy machine. There was literally cotton candy flying all over my hair salon. I should have dressed up as a cotton candy ball when we did like our downtown trick-or-treat day. So my goal is that I am so much more involved than just coming in to get your hair cut. So like I said, I'm really excited anytime anybody asks about that and why I think that the Hive is different than any other hair salon. Also, one thing I like to point out is that we see a ton of people. So on average, so I've done some numbers, I've run an average number. So on average, the Hive sees 100 people a month per girl that works there. So that might fluctuate. So at one point in time, we had 9 stylists working. We had an average of 900 people a month in the Hive. So, and then my lowest that we've had is 400. So at that point in time, so my lowest average of people coming in for a service was 400. My highest was a little over 900. And that doesn't include if they're bringing their spouse or if it's a kid getting a haircut whose mom and dad comes in. So we do see a lot of foot traffic. Also, you know, when you get your hair done, you feel really good about yourself. You might go to a local restaurant. You might go do something fun. And one thing that I get really excited about is that our community is noticing us and seeing us. And so we've had people like Long MacArthur has brought in their VIP people, and they have them do a spa day at our spa. So we do have a spa side. Like I said, we also do have above our salon building, we do have 2 apartments. We have 1 apartment that's rented locally, and then that we have 1 that we short-term lease out. So right now we haven't put it on an Airbnb site. We just do local people that come to work here. Like they come here on Sunday night and they work until Thursday. So we fill that about 3 weeks out of the month. We have somebody in there short-term there. So. And fun fact, I just bought the building next to me. So so if you can't tell, I'm really excited about the Hive. I'm really excited for this opportunity to stand in front of you guys. And like I said, thank you for listening to us, and I'm here for questions.
Well, thank you for your investment in downtown, and it is even though I haven't been in there to get my haircut, I go to a guy, not a girl. So
Yeah.
Got an old bar. Still go to the barber shop.
Still go to the barber shop. That's
So,
right.
but anyway, it is a beautiful location.
Yes, thank
really
you.
appreciate what you've done to
And it's
downtown.
fun. Do you guys have the picture of like before, what it looked like before with like the red ceilings? It was most prominently known for as the Toy Parade. So it's kind of fun. I don't know if you guys have it, but this is what it looked like before. And this was the outside.
Yep.
So we fully did the outside and the inside. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I took a year off of work and was there. I painted. I pulled. There's literally videos. If you go on our like Facebook page, you can see videos of me like pulling drywall off the walls. And so this is it. I don't know. Oh yeah, you got it going on. But
Yep, we've got
So it's
Great.
fun.
Thank you for your
Okay.
investment.
Do you guys
we
have any
appreciate
questions? Thank you. Can I go sit back down now?
it. Okay. I think Mr. Grinning has something to say. He won't be nearly as energetic, but we'll see how he follows this up.
I knew your attorney 60 seconds when he said that was I kind of had heart palpitations when Greg said give me 60 seconds. So Larry Brittingham, 317 South Santa Fe. As Mike said, Guy and I represent Salina 2020, And as I was sitting there, and Mr. Lombard, I think you have a fair question to ask, because part of what took us so long was getting ourselves worked through this particular project and how we were going to look at it, because kind of back to our previous discussion of another topic, you set a policy and then everyone becomes different because the circumstances are different. And so we had to look at it that way. But as I think back 10 years ago when we first came to the city with when Jason was here and Mike and talked about doing this project, I'm not sure how much real estate you could have bought downtown for $1 million, but probably more than one building. And we're working on, I think we have, aside from Flipping Fabulous in the Hive, I think we have 6 other potential at least 4 of them are definitely coming downtown that we haven't even announced yet. One of those is probably going to spend $1 million to $1.5 million on a building renovation. Another one could be, it's going to be at least $1 million and could be as high as a couple $1 million. That's just 2 of them. When somebody like the Hive came in and invested almost $600,000 in a rundown building and does generate some sales tax revenue, we felt very comfortable after going through our committee process that we should reward that somehow. Because of the foot traffic and because of people coming down shopping, because of people coming downtown and eating, and they do generate some sales tax revenue. When somebody is taking that kind of risk, then we felt that we should reward that. A nonprofit organization, we wouldn't. And we have one right now that we're talking to that we're probably going to decline because it doesn't fit. And so there seems to be a lot of interest, and it goes in spurts. So I don't think it's slowing down at all in downtown Salina. If anything, I think we may have more activity this coming year than we've had this year or the year before. But I wanted to respond to you because candidly we struggled too. But finally we got through that and could have a justification of our decision. You know, we didn't really, there really was, I think you can do up to 50% guy on incentives. You can go as high as that. I think the highest we've ever gone is 25 or 30%. And we may have some that go over that. We have one right now that we're looking at that we may make a recommendation to the city manager and ultimately the commission that we go over that. But I think the way we've done this is pretty conservative and yet rewards people taking a risk and a personal risk to do something like they've done at downtown Salina. So unless there's any questions, I'll stop there. Thank you. Yes, sir.
One I was going to ask the city manager, but you may actually be the better person. The agreement was to give an award of 20%.
I believe that's correct.
And every time I do the math, the 20% comes out to $112,000. I'm just wondering where the $157,000 number comes from.
I believe that includes the 5% interest.
Right.
Well, it says 157 plus the 5% interest on top of that. At least that's the way I'm.
Over 16 years, Commissioner Davis. So
Yeah,
you have to factor it over 16 years.
Well, it looks like the interest is on top of the 157 the way it's written.
Bear with me one second. There's an attachment.
And maybe I just couldn't find it. I was assuming that someone had looked at these numbers and approved them, so there was an explanation somewhere, but I couldn't connect the dots.
So and the pages aren't numbered, I apologize, but after the last photograph,
okay,
there is a document entitled The Hive Incentive Allotment and Cap.
Yep.
And the reimbursement of eligible expenses is the 111,843. And then there's a notation of 5% interest. And then if you apply the 5% interest, that's how you get to the 157,253.
It shouldn't say plus, it's inclusive. If you look at the
right, yeah.
incentive allotment.
So
if you look right down here.
And I assume you're looking at the
he's
second
looking at the
paragraph
blue
in my
sheet.
background.
Well, I have the sheet that you're talking about now. It's just that the payment column totals 157, and the interest column totals another 45,000. I don't know whether that 45 comes out of the one, I can't do the
Yeah,
other
if
arithmetic
you
fast
take
enough.
the,
That's 10,000 each line, basically. 1, 2, 3,
Right,
4,
if you-
5, 6.
it kind of works its way backwards. If you take the principal column, you add the interest column, that is then covered by the annual payments and totals the 157.
So does the
I've done this
payment
math.
include because if you add up the
It's right up here is what they showed for, that's the 111.
right, but
Yeah.
the way it's written in the book and
Yeah.
on the page, the payment column alone does total 157. And it looks from this.
But the payment is inclusive of principal and interest.
Right.
So the payment does include the interest? Okay.
Yes.
So the way it's
yes.
written on the blue page is
Is
incorrect. Okay.
Although
that's what
I think I may have taken that language from the agreement language, so I need to double check
Right, because
that.
if the blue, right, that's what I just wanted to make sure I could roughly in my head say, okay, 5%, it probably would boost up to that, but just wanted, because the same issue I noticed in the next one that we're going to look at, but if that's the explanation, that's good. I was initially a little concerned by the delay, because I figured if this was a part of their financial plan, I would think somewhere along the way, somebody would say, hey, there's $110,000 I can't find somewhere here. But then the other side of me says, well, they're not really a risk if they've already paid the money and got the thing up and running. So I'm kind of conflicted on that. It's almost nicer to reimburse.
So if you go to page 4 of the actual transferee agreement, section 7, subsection A, provides that following transferee satisfaction of the access condition, city will provide transferee access to TIF proceeds up to a maximum of $157,253 from the TIF fund. The calculation of the public financing cap is inclusive of both eligible transferee costs expended through development and completion of the project, and a straight line calculation of amortized interest at a rate of 5% per annum on all eligible transferee costs. So that language has
All the
them.
pages, that's the one paragraph I didn't.
Yep. And then there's another section, section E on page 5, that pursuant to the terms of that certain agreement from the new business TIF fund is $9,828 of TIF proceeds as the public finance proceeds annual allotment. So the mechanics of it are more clearly described in the agreement, and I think my characterization in the blue sheet's inaccurate.
The mathematical part of my brain is happy. So, all right, good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, move to authorize you, the mayor, to execute the attached transferee agreement with the Hive as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second authorizing the mayor to execute the attached transferee agreement with the Hive as proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. Okay, that leads us to item 7.6.
Item 7.6, authorize the mayor to execute a transferee agreement with 125 North Santa Fe LLC and Salina 2020 Inc.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is another transferee agreement. The background mechanics of the development agreement, master agreement are all the same as we just discussed. The proposed fund to be utilized rather than the TIF fund is the existing retail improvement CID fund. It is for Flippin' Fabulous. The staff report includes the attached application and supporting information, the communication from Salina 2020 as the master developers. And the proposed funding is $178,121. The blue sheet says plus, but it probably should say inclusive of 5% annual interest, and to be paid for over 19 years. Compared to their estimated project total of $476,598. And so that equates to annual payments of $9,375 per year. The 19 years corresponds with the remainder of the term of the CID districts. I would acknowledge it's different than the 16 years of the TIF. And with that, the applicants have moved to the front row, it appears. Be prepared to answer questions, and there is information attached as far as their project, their application, the specifics of what Flippin' Fabulous does. They're a high-volume Etsy retailer and have rental space as well. And with that, again, your options are to authorize the agreement as proposed, to authorize it with amendments, to postpone consideration and provide direction on additional information you'd like. For further consideration, you could vote to deny, resulting in the approval not being approved as submitted. And once again, in light of the ongoing efforts of the master developer for downtown projects, the pay-as-you-go format of this incentive, the level of activity and interest in this particular fund, and the nature of the specific request, I recommend option number 1.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Scragg? And then if not, we'll hear from the applicants if you have anything you'd like to say.
Hi, Carrie Bogart and Lisa Holmes from 127 North Santa Fe. We are so grateful to be here. Thank you for your time. We've been looking for a building downtown since we opened 8 years ago, and we really just couldn't find one that it could either afford or that we could see vision in how it would fit with our business. And poor Mike Wilson, he took us to probably 30 properties, and so I think he probably thought we weren't really serious about buying one, but we had seen this one a couple times, and we looked at it, and it was really it was dilapidated. No one had been in there since the arena, and I think they had been gone for 8 to 10 years. There was a couple dead animals in there, a lot of bikes, a lot of food, lots of baseball cards. And so the building was in disrepair. We were excited to buy it. We renovated it in 45 days.
Which one of you is in there painting late at night when I drive by?
That'd be me.
There we go. I wondered if I was...
My kids are grown. Lisa has small kids, so she gets to tend to her kids at night. I've got my other kid in that row. He's the drill sergeant that pretty much ran our renovation. So we were grateful. He took off a month from his business and made Lisa and I work from sun up to sundown in that store. But we are so proud of what we've accomplished. Our revenue is up 47% year over year from last year from our last location. We've been there a full year. We also own the building adjacent to or next to it, Atlas Optical, and he actually has made the comment several times that his business, his numbers are great. Don's very forthcoming about that kind of stuff, but we know that at a time when he retires, we would also love to be able to fill that space with a sales tax generating business that complements ours. So, we're all in. We're committed to downtown. We got to make her work.
So your application did a good job of kind of explaining Flippin' Fabulous, but for those that aren't familiar, you might just elaborate a little bit on the business model.
So we actually have a lot of different facets to our business. Do you want to?
No, go ahead.
You're doing great. So part of our business, our storefront, takes up a lot of our business, and we have, we started out just doing refinishing older furniture, vintage pieces, pieces that we could get, very budget friendly. We still have those available in the store, but we also brought in a new line that is unfinished and that people can customize. Think about Crestwood cabinets, but on a budget scale. So it's kind of nice to have that option for people. So we meet at a big level of all economic areas. From lower budget all the way up to the top budget. We do a lot of e-commerce. Our website is, fully functioning, and we ship out every day, and we're in the top 1% of all Etsy sellers worldwide, and there's millions of Etsy sellers. So we've really worked hard at building a diverse business. So that way, like I said in our application, I don't know if there's a business that's recession proof, but we're trying real hard to hit every single aspect of our business to make it profitable, so that way we can we can survive any sort of economic upturn, downturn, and anywhere in between.
They do have cool stuff.
Thank you.
you're going to probably leave before the meeting for us is over. Do you still refinish furniture?
We do.
Okay.
That is actually the best part of our furniture. You know, we love to refinish furniture. We just try to, diversify it a little bit so that way, we get a lot, we ship out a lot of paint, a lot of DIY supplies, things like that. So, we do a lot of that. We do workshops. We actually have from one of our lines, her name is Anna Finnebear-Dovosky, and she is world renowned in mixed media. And she would, next time that she comes to the States to do a tour for one of our big line, Prima, which we're the largest brick and mortar in the world, she would like to come to Salina to do a workshop. And she did one in Kansas City, and it was huge. I mean, it was, I'm blown away at what actually I paid to go to one of her workshops. So, I mean, she's just a really great, so she could bring a lot of traffic. We have people that drive from Oklahoma, Missouri. I mean, it's crazy that in Nebraska, they will drive to our store because we have so many DIY supplies, and we can tell them how to do it. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So bring your furniture down.
Okay.
We'll do it.
Any other questions or comments? If nothing else, 2020
can you
group
tell
has
us-
brought people with energy
Energy.
downtown, haven't they? I mean, it's like,
I don't have as much as Nikki.
what'd she say?
She'll come talk more of you.
No, no. It's good to see that excitement downtown. And
Can you tell us about the residential area up above your store?
So we do. We have a 5,900 square foot loft upstairs. And, originally that was buried with about 3 foot of trash. I mean, they did have some people living in it, but they since moved out, and we struck an agreement with our current tenant, and they kind of cleaned it up. Compro did the junk removal. They cleaned it up, and, we've done some building maintenance that hadn't been done for probably a decade. But we've got actually a sober living facility up there right now. So that's owned and operated completely separate from us, but we have an agreement with them, that they have the upstairs. It's really suited for that kind of business, some sort of shared living space. Originally, we had very big plans for it, to demo it and make it into apartments. And then we got some estimates, and we quickly decided that we were not in that income bracket to be able to afford that. So, and that may be somewhere down the road. We want to just be fiscally responsible and not get in over our heads. But so right now, we're just running it as is. It's a great fit for us, and, we're really excited to be able to do that. We also have a counseling office in the back of the other side of 125 North Santa Fe too. So we've pretty much utilized every single square foot that building has to offer.
Good job. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, any other comments from the public? If not, I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we authorize to execute the attached transfer agreement with Flipping Fabulous as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to authorize the mayor to execute the attached transferee agreement with Flipping Fabulous as proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0, so thank you very much, ladies. Congratulations. Okay, that will bring us to other business. Is there an item a commissioner would like to bring before the group?
I'd highlight that Salina Post ran a nice story on one of my classmates this past week, Kathy Ryder at the sewage treatment plant, chemist, and I'd commend them on doing a nice story on one of our longtime city employees, 30-year employee, that I don't know how you're going to replace her.
Truth be told, we don't either. That's tough.
One question for Commissioner Longbine. I was not able to make the North Salina meeting. Did the Department of Transportation come to discuss the bus stop?
I did not make that either. I got
We do have one person that
sick.
did, though.
Mr. Hennessy,
okay.
I think, did.
Any?
So, Right now, there is discussion about moving the current bus drop-off point. Currently, it's located at Thomas Park. It's not certain yet, so I want to wait until I can give you something definitive on that but they are looking at a new location for that bus drop-off point, which will have, protection from the elements and otherwise, which is currently not found at the bus stop.
And without naming the business, and Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a business that's aware of the need and aware of how it all functions, indicating interest to cooperate with Greyhound and Beeline and serve as a ticket sales point and a drop-off
Yes.
Transportation hub.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. No other business. That leads us to citizens forum. Opportunity for anybody that would like to approach the commission. Ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Norman Mantle, Salina. It's in the news again about water issues, if you've seen the Salina paper. Now, the U.S. Senate has just confirmed a Kansas judge to the U.S. District Court, the 10th Circuit. You're going to watch rulings about water rights, property rights, social issues. I have access to the Western Livestock Journal. You guys ought to watch it and read it, because it's coming here. The 10th Circuit covers this area. Dams are being removed in the United States as we speak. They're going to remove all these dams. They're violating national laws of nature. Your action on 6-3, does this site have historical significance? It's the Founders Park. Are you encroaching on history, destroying it? There's a lot going on in the circuit courts about property issues in the West, and it's coming here because the 10th Circuit Court covers this area. Property rights, water rights. You better get on board because it's going to change.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Here's a question. Just quick historical perspective. Mr. Mennel asked me about the name of Founders Park, and I will admit I have not gotten that deep in Salina history. Is it of any significant historical, I don't say importance, but did anything famous happen there or something?
Without researching it, I don't know either.
Okay, well, we'll follow up in 2024.
Just something
okay.
else. So.
Give us a couple of weeks.
Anything else? Okay, we do not meet for a couple weeks due to Christmas and New Year, so I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll see you January 8th of 2024.
Yep.
Correct? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn with that?
So moved.
Second.
That, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, see you next year.
Do you know the answer?